Not at all.
Stay tuned. Coming right up, Jim Oberweis. Yes, you remember Jim Oberweis. He ran for governor right around 2001, 2002 in the Republican primary. He ran in the U.S. Senate, the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate nomination in 2004. Remember that? We'll talk about that a little bit. And, then a few years back, has it been 2 years, Jim?
For what?
For you when you ran for state senate?
1 year.
1 year, okay. So he's been a state senator for 1 year. You're going to hear mostly about that. All those things that are going on. We're taping this on August 31st. Look, everybody's talking about, are we going to have state employee pension reform, or this state is going down the tubes? You know what? They said that about a year and a half ago. But you're going to learn so much. It's going to be really good. Don't turn that station, or you're going to miss a really, 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 how many times can I say really? Really good show. So yeah, whatever. So just give us a big smile. You're not asking a lot, okay? Can you give me that big smile? You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest State Senator Jim Oberweis. He is, of course, he's the representative of the 50th, wait a second, no, the 25th State District, which includes the 49th and 50th House districts.
Right.
It's like way the hell out there. If you're like in Chicago, it's out in Aurora. Just go far west.
Actually, it's centrally located, much more so than Chicago.
It's centrally located. Jim will be here through this entire show to correct everything I say. It's going to be an interesting show. No, seriously, it's out there, but it's centrally located. It includes Aurora. We air in Aurora. We air in Montgomery. We air in Oswego with our friends on Aurora Community Television. Okay, and hi Scott, how are you doing out there? All my friends in Aurora. These could be voters of yours, right?
Aurora is the second largest city in the state of Illinois.
It's a big deal. No, and I love it because that's where Waynesville came from.
Waynesville,
right?
yep.
Came from Aurora, so I'm in good hands with those folks. But it includes Bartlett. It includes many areas in your district. But everybody's watching this and they kind of want to know, Jim, what the hell is happening? Why isn't there state employee pension reform? It's August 31st. Some people said, I think a year and a half ago it would have to happen. Hell, they said it would have to happen when the governor's race for 2010 was going on, right?
Jeff, I was elected last November, and I really thought there was a pretty good chance that I would never have a chance to actually vote on it, that it would be dealt with in the veto session last year before I got to Springfield. When that didn't happen, I thought, well, good, maybe I can provide some input. And quite frankly, during my first term, I only introduced two bills. One was true pension reform that would have converted us from the current defined benefit system to a defined contribution system, where a 401k type plan, where we know the state on a monthly basis would be contributing a certain amount to each employee's retirement plan, and the employees could invest that as they saw fit, and they would have full control over those assets instead of the politicians having control over those assets. Unfortunately, Mr. Cullerton and Mr. Madigan did not like that because the unions didn't like that, and it, of course, went nowhere. A similar bill was introduced in the House, and it went nowhere. It was designed by the Illinois Policy Institute. The second bill I introduced was a bill that would increase the speed limits on our tollways and interstates to 70 miles an hour. And I got a very good education in politics and how things work in Springfield, but I managed to get that bill passed.
You mean, yes, you managed to get that bill passed, but you weren't able to get the much more important bill. You couldn't even get it called, right, in the Senate, right?
Well, after asking John Cullerton for a favor, he allowed it to be discussed in a subcommittee hearing, which was, of course, fairly meaningless, and you're right, it never had a chance to get to the floor. And he made it very clear that it's not getting to the floor because the unions don't like it.
The
union leadership doesn't like it.
But look, let's not be modest, Jim. Let's get right to the point. You're worth, like, what, $100 million?
Oh, don't be silly.
$50 million?
Hey, Jeff, come on.
Oh,
I'm just a poor little
Oberweis
dairy farmer.
Asset Management is like all yours, right?
No, the largest shareholder is my son. I'm the second largest shareholder. I started the business,
So
but
you
I've
and your
turned that
son
over to him.
control a lot of it. There's a lot of wealth there. You don't have to tell me the amount of money, okay? And the point I'm making is, of course, it's good that there's wealth. There are many journalists who would say you should be embarrassed that you have wealth. No, Jim. Wealth is an accomplishment. It's a good thing. You've created many jobs for the state of Illinois, and Oberweis Asset Management and Oberweis Dairy. No. This is not a show where you have to be ashamed that you've been involved in successful businesses that have created jobs and have made, along the way, wealth for you. My point is, couldn't you use some of that? Couldn't you use some of that to get the word out that you have this bill and it's not being called in the Senate, and that Senate President Cullerton basically is saying no? And look, we like John. We're not partisan. I'm just thinking as an academic, if you will, as somebody who's assessed and analyzed this for a while. I know you care about this deeply, this meaning ideas and what would be good for the state of Illinois, in your view, is to have this pension reform. And we know the unions are opposed to it, and we know the unions have tremendous influence on Senate President Cullerton. So his bill is one that's very much, if not favored by the union, certainly preferred. And we know that Kwame Raoul, who recently said he's not going to run for governor, surprise, surprise, couldn't raise the money, okay? We know how difficult that is, Jim, okay? You've been involved in that. So Kwame's a nice guy, and he's been on this show. But look, he couldn't raise the money. Why? Because, look, a lot of the people he would have to go to, he thought he could go to the unions. He's running a compromise bill. It's going to be like Cullerton's. They would love him. They don't have a labor guy there because they're upset with Quinn, right? But you know what? Quinn's the governor, and he's pretty influential. And Bill Daley's the Daley family is pretty influential. And, Kwame just couldn't cut it. But this whole little monologue, okay, is why not just take them on? Why not put some money, whether you do it yourself, you start a PAC, you do it, there's many ways to have influence. And get the word out. The word out that, folks, Illinois is going to go down the tubes unless you get this reform, and you've got a bill that could be very good for Illinois, but it can't even get to the floor because Senate President Cullerton doesn't want it, and that would put pressure on Cullerton to put the bill up.
Jeff, look, we did everything we could to get that bill out. We had the backing of the Illinois Chamber. We had the backing of the Civic Federation. This bill was actually designed originally by Illinois Policy Institute. It's not far out legislation. It actually is a plan that is in effect right now for in the state university employment system. Professors have a choice to go into the regular state plan or to go into this plan. And about 15% have selected this plan. So this is not something crazy. This is an existing plan. We proposed it along with the Illinois Policy Institute. We had a press conference in Chicago to try to get attention to it. Everything I had written about the plan. We've done all that we could. But remember, we have 19 Republicans in the Senate and there are 40 Democrats in the Senate. And the Democrats are not going to back a plan that the unions are that opposed to.
Well, take a minute now, okay? I'm going to do something people say I don't do enough of. I'm going to feature my guest, okay? Just in case you folks aren't noticing this. My guest is State Senator Jim Oberweis. As I said, he ran for governor in 2001 and 2002 or so in the Republican primary, okay?
It was 8 years ago, actually, 2006.
For governor?
2004.
Didn't you do it in 2000? You did something in 2001, 2002, I'm pretty sure.
U.S. Senate.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Remember that comment about the Taliban? Was that comment made? I thought it was the gubernatorial race, because you wouldn't be talking about abortion in the Taliban for the Senate race, would you?
I'm sure.
Okay. He knows this better than I do. Whatever. He's run for governor. He's run for the Senate. He's an idea person. Where'd you get your undergraduate degree from?
University of Illinois, MBA from the University of Chicago.
That's what I thought. And see, we have these University of Chicago mugs in your honor. I had a business school, we had somewhere, business school mug given to us by John Cochran, who's at the business school, or the Booth Business School. I broke it recently. It's like breaking my heart. But seriously, Jim, so you're an idea person. You understand business. You understand all of these things. And you've just told me, okay, it's difficult because there are 40 Democrats in the U.S. Senate and only 19 Republicans.
Illinois Senate,
What did I just say?
U.S. Senate.
Excuse me. I told you, folks, I'm not going to make any mistakes in this show. Because I got Jim Oberweis here to correct me, and I mean that. It's good. All during the show. So I know that's a difficulty, but Jim, you could go on the hustings. You're out on this show talking about it, and we're going to take a minute or two to talk about that bill that you had specifically. You could go from Hamlet to Hamlet. Are you lacking the energy to do that? Because you know what? If you were to go from Hamlet to Hamlet, well, then maybe you would be helping elect some Republican state senators, so eventually there wouldn't be a margin of 40 to 19. It might be 35 to 24, as it used to be, and then eventually it might be 30 to 29, as it was at once, and before you know it, Jim, it would be a Republican majority. Why don't you do that?
Well, Jeff, I think you've kind of missed what's been going on, because that's exactly what I have been doing for the last year.
Hamlet to Hamlet?
Well, it depends on what you mean by Hamlet, but certainly towns across our district and even outside of our district.
You got to go outside your district.
Well, I have been going outside of our district.
I appreciate what you've done for your district, but you've got to do more.
I have been at Tea Party meetings throughout the Chicago area. I've been at some downstate meetings. We've been at Tea Party meetings in Springfield.
Jim, you've got to go outside the Tea Party. You've got to go to the people who are not yet converted. You're preaching to the converted. Don't you understand that? You've got to go to the Democrats who want to be in a state where they can get jobs, and if they become convinced that their Democrats who they voted for are not going to be able to keep jobs there,
here is the
they're
problem.
going to start voting for your guys.
In the Illinois Senate, I've learned a lot of things over the last 6 months when I've been there. I've been very pleasantly surprised at how nice some of my Democrat colleagues are. Quite frankly, I honestly didn't know very many elected Democrat officials before.
They're guests of public affairs. They're nice guys. I'm not saying. Look, John McCulloch's a nice guy.
Time out. Let me finish what I'm trying to say. Okay. That's one of the pleasant things, as I found out, and I made some very good friends.
Good.
But on the other side, I have been absolutely dismayed and shocked at how little some of my Democrat colleagues from Chicago understand about economics or about business. It is absolutely depressing. They just don't get it. They think that business is this golden goose out here, and they want to catch some of those golden eggs and spend it on their favorite projects. In fact, I've described some of my colleagues as being very well-meaning, well-intentioned individuals who believe it's their job to help allocate the infinite resources of the state of Illinois to the projects they deem most worthwhile.
Well, of course.
You know what the catch in there was, don't you? Infinite resources of Illinois. Illinois doesn't have infinite resources or anything like that.
Tell people what the definition in 8 words of economics is.
I'm sorry,
Do you remember the definition of economics? I'm helping you a bit.
Go right ahead.
Allocation of scarce resources, or some would say allocation of limited resources among what? Unlimited wants. So that's the key thing. I don't know if it's 7 or 8 words, but the key thing I learned way back when in economics, at the University of Chicago and one of their satellites, we have unlimited wants and we have limited resources.
But they don't understand that.
But Jim, this is you are the Republican Party's secret weapon. You are to go out there like a missionary. Okay? Whether it's a Catholic missionary, whether it's an economics missionary, you have to have missionary zeal. You have the belief, and you have the knowledge, and you have the tools. Now, I think all you need, Jim, I think this is it. Somebody just to wind you up like an Energizer bunny and send you out. Now, Jim, it's not enough to go to tea parties. You have to go behind the lines, so to speak, to the democratic functions, to the democratic events, and ask to engage them. If they have somebody there, like Senator Daniel Biss. You know Daniel Biss, right?
Of course. Actually, I think he's one of the better guys.
He's one of the better guys. But he hasn't been on this show lately, but that's okay, Dan. That's okay. I understand you're a busy guy, okay? But, he has events. Go to him and say, I would like to be at your next event when you're discussing pensions. They're in Skokie. Right there, in your land, okay, which is his land, I mean, he envisions himself. Dan, everybody knows you're just waiting for Jan Schakowsky to step down so you can run in the 9th Congressional District. So that's where he's working, that
Jeff,
district.
just so you know,
So just go to Dan and say, cool.
I've been to events that Napoleon Harris holds. He's a Democrat senator.
I know. He was up at Northwestern. I spoke
I've
with
been to
Napoleon.
events and become friends with Marty Sandoval, quite frankly.
He's another good guy. He's been on public affairs. Okay?
So look,
Cicero, right? Cicero, isn't that Cicero?
That's yes, part of
his district. Right?
So my point is, I'm not just sitting at home at night. I am out to different events.
We're grateful. Your people are grateful for what you do. Don't think we're ingrates. We're just trying to. Maybe you need to get a few more like you. Maybe you need to clone a little bit. Okay? You've got 5 kids, right?
Yes.
Could you rip one of those away, borrow some of that time away from the Oberweis dairy?
No, they're all focused on their own lives and their own businesses,
17 grandkids.
and they don't really like
you
politics.
got an army, 17 grandkids. Like you could be, all right, we're gonna enough hidden.
I've tried to get my wife to go out and do that. Now
Julie,
she
I
does
just met
like
her.
politics and she understands politics,
Well, of
but I
course.
can't get her out doing much of
Why?
that.
She's much. I mean this as a compliment. She's much more attractive than you are.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
So they love that, and she's smart.
Yes, she is.
If you have a woman who's both smart and attractive, that's like, it's an inevitable means to persuade people, don't you think?
Yes. Now, why don't you convince her of that?
Okay, I'll talk to her right after the show. All right. Seriously, we got to get serious here. In a nutshell, just to recap in a minute, what does your pension bill do? Your proposed legislation that you can't get to. Give people an idea, because I always thought you have to do things like lower the retirement age, so like raise the retirement age so people retire later. I thought you have to raise the employee contribution. You have to freeze the COLA, the cost of living adjustment.
Look, what our bill would do would permanently end the unfunded pension liability problem by, first of all, it would pay everybody whatever benefits they had already earned, but it would end COLAs going forward. Whatever COLAs they've already earned, they get to keep. Whatever benefits they've already earned, they get to keep.
How do you earn a COLA going forward? I'm just stopping.
Well, under our current system, people get 3% compounded annual increases in cost of living adjustments.
They're not going to under your bill.
Under our bill, that would have stopped with the current COLAs that they've already earned. Whatever they've already earned.
The pass.
Yes.
If your bill passed on September 1, 2013.
Whatever they'd earned by September 1, 2013, they would get, and they'd get their pension payments. After that, they would continue to get that same level, but not a thing additional.
Wait,
but
are they going to get any kind of cost of living adjustment after September 1, 2013?
If they're already retired, no. If they're still working, what they would get is a payment into a 401k type plan of 8% of their own contribution plus a 7% matching contribution from the state of Illinois on a monthly basis.
So a defined contribution, but not a defined benefit for work going forward.
Correct.
And so now people might not know, under the current system, they have a defined benefit when they retire, and that defined benefit gets increased by not the cost of living, but by statutory 3%.
Right.
So if the cost of living goes up 1.5%, they get 3. They get double the cost of living, and it gets compounded.
Let's compare this with private industry. In private industry, people don't get COLAs anymore. That's done. In fact, they don't even get defined benefits anymore. Almost every major corporation has gone from defined benefit plans to a 401k type plan. Okay. Defined benefit plans are virtually. Now, there are some companies, and I'll name some, United Airlines, General Motors, Delta Airlines, U.S. Steel, Bethlehem Steel, and so on, who didn't move away from defined benefit plans. And guess what? They all went bankrupt. Exactly. Now, the problem with the state of Illinois can't go bankrupt. Cities like Detroit can go bankrupt. Counties can go bankrupt, but the state of Illinois can't go bankrupt. If you could go bankrupt and shift those pension liabilities to the federal government, which is what U.S. Steel and Bethlehem Steel and United Airlines.
When you say you can't go bankrupt, this is hypothetically.
There's no provision for bankruptcy.
That may be, but if the state of Illinois government, the legislature, of which you are a part,
yes,
good. I can ask the right person because I've got a state senator right in front of me. As it happens, folks, isn't it great? Isn't life great the way this works? Okay, I get to do this, and folks, that's why I do this. It's so much fun. Seriously, it is. Jim doesn't remember. I've been doing this for many years. I had like probably 10, 15 conversations just on our show. And then we probably had more than Jim would care to remember after events and things like that, when Berkowitz was dogging him, okay? But it's a great thing because Jim is a smart guy and he's an interesting guy. And but for this show and but for this role I have, I wouldn't get to have those conversations. Thank you very much, Jim Oberweis.
So what's the question?
So I forgot the question. No, no, the question is, so you've just said, okay, you've outlined a sensible plan, a defined contribution plan instead of a defined benefit plan.
And by the way, that would cut the unfunded liability by about 50% immediately.
Right.
And on top of that, it would actually reduce the required contributions the state makes on an annual basis by about $1 billion a year. And after about 20, 25 years, all the unfunded liability would be paid off, and we'd never have a chance of getting back to that kind of an unfunded liability.
Right, and initially when you say about half, would you say about $100 billion is the amount of unfunded? That's a conservative estimate now?
The state of Illinois estimates at about $100 billion. Moody's estimates at about $200 billion, the difference being an estimated return on assets. My best guess, and I do have some knowledge in this area,
because
is
remember,
that it would
folks,
be,
he runs a very lucrative company that it's called Oberweis, there's the camera, I forgot where it was, Oberweis Asset Management, okay? Also known by me as OAM, but so you manage wealth. Your company takes wealth, people have worked hard for it, they trust you not to embezzle it, they trust you to advise them how to invest it. This is how you make your living.
We
right?
have a family of mutual funds that we manage, and we also manage pension assets primarily in growth equities for large pension plans.
So
and I also
know wherever you speak, okay?
I also serve on the Moose International Pension Investment Committee. So yes, I've got a lot of experience in that area. And my best guesstimate is our true unfunded liability is probably 130 to 140 billion.
And what happens when you say half of it goes away, and I didn't understand this till recently, and that's why I keep saying you have to keep talking, because I think I'm a reasonably smart guy.
Much of it is related to the unfunded COLAs.
And I didn't understand how it goes away, but it goes away really because if you go to a defined contribution system, I think this, and tell me if I'm right, I think what that means is then going forward, all of those things that were defined benefits going forward go away, and instead you have a defined contribution, and that defined contribution is not a future liability because until the money is earned, the contribution isn't earned, right?
That's right. It's made on a monthly basis. The employee makes a contribution, and the state makes a contribution on a monthly.
So that's why the unfunded
401k plans.
That's why half the unfunded liability goes away.
No, it's not. The unfunded liability goes away because we would be ending COLAs right now. Remember, an unfunded liability is the fact that the state has not put enough assets into the pension plans to pay off the expected liabilities going in the future.
It's all because you end COLAs? It's not because you go to a defined contribution system?
The 50% reduction in unfunded liability is because you're ending COLAs.
Really?
However, you're never going to get back to an unfunded liability because there'll never be any future unfunded liabilities. You still have the other half of the unfunded liability that gets paid off over a long period of time.
But I'm saying, but looking ahead, if you're putting money in, only if it's earned, okay? Mm-hmm. Doesn't it go away because there's no unfunded liability?
Right, there is no new unfunded liability.
It's because you're going to two things, you're going to a defined contribution system,
right,
and because you're ending COLAs. It seems to me it's both. Well, I'm not going to argue it because we don't want to take time.
The unfunded liability goes away because you are no longer creating new future unfunded liabilities, but you still have some of the past unfunded liability.
I understand that. That's
going forward, there will be no new unfunded liability.
If it's clear to you folks, it's fine. If it's not clear to me, last time, I want to apologize to the people who watched our last show with Julie Hamos. There was something incredibly easy. Julie was stating it very nicely, and I just didn't get it. And I wasted 10 minutes of my viewers' time. I'm not going to do that. I'm sure we privately can continue this conversation.
Sure.
All right, so you've outlined something that's enormously easy to understand. Well, no. It takes a little doing.
It's difficult to understand.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's right. You got to get into it, and that's one reason why the legislators who want to and have fooled so much of the public for a long time, it's a dry subject. People, like 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago, people were talking about this, and even I would say, okay, my eyes would gloss over, and I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Incidentally, Jeff, where we're at right now is we've put together a conference committee consisting of members of both the House and the Senate to supposedly come back with a new bill. I asked to be on that conference committee because guess what? I understand pensions. I've got a few ideas, but I was told, no, I'm too much of a freelancer.
Who told you that?
I'm not quite sure what that means, but I think it means I might come up with some different ideas that might not be acceptable to
Well,
the
Did your
leadership.
leader, the Republican leader, Christine Radogno, tell you that? She's the Senate Republican leader. Nobody's listening. You can just whisper in the ear. Okay? Chris, don't listen.
Let's go ahead with other
Okay,
questions.
so the answer is yes. That was Christine Radogno who told you that. And I mean, isn't that a problem when your own leader won't put you in the position she should? Who did she put there instead? Who's there from the Republican Senate?
I believe Bill Brady is there, and
Well,
I
Bill's
believe
a good guy. He
he's a
knows
good
a lot of
guy.
this.
He's been involved in this for a
Okay.
long time,
I
and
won't
I
argue with that too much.
believe that Matt Murphy is the other, but I'm not positive.
Okay, so you're saying you would have been a little better than Bill or Matt because you do have more experience and knowledge and.
And I'm not tied to the past.
You're not
I'm
tied.
willing to come up
You're
with.
saying Bill might be tied a little bit because he's been a state legislator.
Look, he's
for
running
20
for
years.
governor. He's got to be
Gotta
careful what he
careful.
says.
We
That's right.
understand that. It's not a knock on Bill.
Right.
And Matt would like to be governor someday, and he kind of ran for lieutenant governor.
And that's Kwame Raoul's problem too.
He wanted to do
He
that.
wants to be governor, but now
But
he's
see,
kind of stuck where he's
You
on
can
this
do what
committee.
you could run, because you're not running, because you said this is all in your past. You just want to do the public good now. And Chris said, no, we'd rather go with Bill Brady and with Matt Murphy. Is that right?
Let's proceed on.
Well, this is a good lesson. And actually, we used to have Chris Radogno on the show. We're not really against her. She used to come on. But then when she got to be Senate Republican leader, she said she doesn't have time.
She's done a very good job in many areas.
But not in
she
electing
has-
state senators. What was the margin of Republicans and Democrats in the state Senate when she came in? Was it 5 or 6 years ago?
We've lost a few seats. I don't know exactly
It's gotten
how many.
worse.
Yes.
If you're the CEO
Yep.
and your company is not doing well, and then you come in and you lose even more money, do you think you get to stay the CEO?
No.
No. But yet Christine Radogno, and look, Chris, it's not a slap on you, but people have to face up to it. Chris stays there even though she's lost. She's done the equivalent of losing money for the state of Illinois Republican Party.
She's done some things much better than I expected or anticipated. She's pretty good at communicating. And I think the Republican Party is not wanting to have, what's the phrase, white old men or something, or old white men in leadership positions.
Could we find another woman who might be better? Is there another female in the state Senate?
Yeah, there are several actually. We've got quite a few. Karen McConaughey, we've
Yeah.
got Sue Resin, Pam Altoff. So
Isn't it
there's
time
several.
to change? Just give somebody else a shot. Look, Chris.
Well,
it's
we
not
just did in the
personal.
House.
just did.
Tom
That's a good
Cross has
segue
stepped
into
down,
that.
and Jim Durkin has taken
But see,
leadership.
Cross had to. That was the other thing. Cross also has lost seats. 71-47 is the margin in the Republican House. It was better when he came in. So he's been a loser. Tom, I'd like to have you come on the show and defend yourself, but you have to give facts. And basically, Tom, you're running for state treasurer, but you're a loser. He's a loser because he lost state house seats, didn't he?
Look,
for Republicans.
this was a very difficult year for Republicans with Barack Obama on
It's
the
been
ticket.
difficult. It was always difficult. He's been losing seats. That's it. But Tom, fine, run for treasurer. But the point is, okay, because he ran for treasurer and because people thought he wouldn't focus as leader, he had to
Right.
step down.
I think that's right, yes.
And there was a race of sorts. There was a contest between Jim Durkin, state rep, good friend. We're not partial, but Jim's been nice about coming on the show. State rep from, what's the
Ray
other, Western
Poe
Springs and so forth.
Jim is, yes.
Jim is,
Right.
and Ray Poe is downstate.
Right.
Ray is,
Champaign.
of course, on the other side. He's like with the Dems on pensions. He would have been so bad to have as a Republican leader, to be
Yeah.
honest, right?
I like Ray. I think he's a
Personally.
nice guy.
He had all
He's
the wrong
generally
ideas.
speaking, but on pensions, he's not been in the right place.
So you got the right guy now, and that you have Durkin there, okay? And now maybe you can elect some. Well, this is interesting because you would know something about it. There was a fuss about the state GOP chairman, and that was Pat Brady. And then he came out essentially for same-sex marriage, and you were pretty upset, and you and others worked to dump him, and eventually he got dumped. Jim Durkin, Pat Brady, good buddies. right?
Yes, yes.
They both supported McCain. They support each other. In fact, Durkin was one of the reasons maybe why Pat Brady got to be state GOP chairman. And before that, National Republican Committeeman.
That was before I was on the
We're
State
going to
Central
continue to
Committee.
speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, State Senator Jim Oberweis. Thank you so much, Jim, for coming out here. The time has gone all too fast.
Thanks, Jeff.
But I think everybody's got a pretty good idea of what has to be done about state employee pensions, right?
I hope so.
They don't have any idea when it's going to happen or if it will happen because this compromise committee, this conference
It
committee,
has to happen. It has
this
to happen
conference
soon.
committee, there's no hope that that committee can come up with a compromise that's any good, right?
Well, they're going to come up with a compromise. You
not
added
gonna be
that's
any good.
It'd probably be better
It's
than
gonna be-
Cullerton's bill, probably not as good as Madigan's
Madigan.
bill,
So
and
it's-
certainly not the right answer. The right answer is to go to defined contribution
Which
plans.
Jeannie Ives from the state, it's
Right.
the Morrison-Ives
Right.
Oberweis bill,
That's right. So
And
they-
Jeannie came out and said this.
Yep.
So, but they're not going to do that, and so you'll be back. They'll be back 2 or 3 years later. What do you like for governor, Jim? Okay.
Whoever
For
wins the Republican
candidate.
nomination.
Is that it?
Absolutely.
Playing it safe.